On July 14, 1518, the residents of the city of Strasbourg in the Alsace region of Europe, which is France today, saw a strange and unusual sight. A woman was dancing alone in the streets of the city without any music. People pointed at her and laughed at her, but she kept dancing as if she didn't care about what they were saying. Those who got close to her said that she didn't look like she was enjoying the dancing. In fact, there were signs of exhaustion on her face, but despite that, she kept dancing. Hours passed, the day went by, and the woman was still dancing non-stop. She danced until the sun went down and night fell, and people went back to their homes, but the woman stayed alone in the street dancing. She kept dancing all night and didn't stop until she collapsed and fainted in the street from fatigue and exhaustion. The name of this woman is Frau Troffea. It's not exactly clear why she was dancing, but some accounts say that she danced out of defiance toward her husband. The story says that earlier that day, she was walking in the streets of the city with her husband, who said something that upset her. It's not clear exactly what he said, but it seems he may have asked her to do certain household chores, or maybe she asked him to buy her something from the market and he refused. Either way, his words upset her deeply, and she decided to respond in a strange way. The wife started dancing in the middle of the street. Maybe her goal was to embarrass her husband in public by drawing attention. If that was her goal, it seems she succeeded. People started looking at them and laughing at them, and the husband became very embarrassed by what his wife was doing. He yelled at her and asked her to stop, but she kept dancing as if she didn't care about him. The husband lost his patience and left her dancing alone in the middle of the crowd. But what he didn't know was that his wife would not be returning home that night. On the morning of the second day, Troffea regained consciousness after fainting. She got up from the ground, started moving her legs, and continued dancing. People gathered around her, trying to understand this strange sight. If her goal in dancing was to protest against her husband, then it seems she had greatly exaggerated. The message had already been delivered the day before, and there was no need for her to continue on the second day. But the woman kept dancing non-stop. Time passed and the second day went by. Troffea's feet began to swell and get wounded, but that didn't stop her from dancing. It became clear that what she was doing went beyond just getting back at her husband. The woman kept dancing on her swollen feet until she collapsed again from exhaustion. The third day came, and Troffea got up again and continued dancing. Some of the people gathered around her started to join her and began dancing with her. It's not clear how this started, whether it was out of mockery or sympathy, but a number of people got into it with Troffea and started spinning and dancing with her without any music. What the residents of the city didn't expect was that those who joined Troffea in her dancing became like her. They danced for the rest of the day without stopping. They all danced until they collapsed to the ground from extreme exhaustion. The next day, they got up and continued dancing. Not only did they keep dancing, but their numbers increased, as more people strangely began to join them. This event had never happened before in the city of Strasbourg. According to accounts, the dancers continued and their number grew until it reached 34 dancers by the sixth day. All of them were dancing non-stop, and fatigue and exhaustion were clearly visible on them during the brief moments when some dancers would snap out of this state. The dancers would scream, calling for help from passers-by and asking them to save them, but soon they would continue dancing again, as if the thing making them dance was a force controlling them and giving them no chance to stop. The leaders of Strasbourg gathered in the city council to urgently deal with the dancing issue. The number of dancers was increasing every day. Men started missing work, farmers began leaving their crops unharvested. Bakers stopped making bread for the city's residents, and mothers started leaving their children without care. The dancing condition was spreading like an epidemic affecting everyone, and the city council had to intervene and find a solution to this problem, or the epidemic would lead to the collapse of society. The city council summoned a number of doctors to consult them on diagnosing the condition of the dancers. And in an attempt to understand what exactly was happening, when the doctors saw the dancers, they believed they had an idea about the cause of this phenomenon. The doctor's explanation was that the reason for the dancing was that the dancers had hot blood, meaning they had excess energy that their bodies were trying to release through continuous dancing. This explanation might sound strange to us, but it was consistent with their medical knowledge in the 16th century. The solution the doctors suggested for this problem was to encourage more dancing. They said to let them release all their energy through dancing, and that after a few days they would return to normal. The city council listened to the doctors and carried out their suggestion. They built a platform in the middle of the city so the dancers could gather there together in one place and hype each other up. They also brought in musical bands to play for the dancers and encourage them to keep dancing. They even brought in additional dancers to dance with the others and keep them energized so the dancing wouldn't slow down. The dancing became faster and went on for longer hours, all day and all night without any breaks. Those who fainted from exhaustion were woken up and brought back to the dance area. If the dancers had any excess energy, then they weren't given any chance to rest, and the dancing would continue until that energy was drained. But it didn't seem like this was producing any clear results. The dancing continued, and the number of dancers kept increasing instead of decreasing. Their number reached over 100 people, and this period marked a turning point in the danger of the dancing plague. The story says that some of the dancers during this period collapsed from extreme exhaustion, but this time they didn't get back up. The dancing plague began to kill those affected by it. This didn't stop the city council from encouraging the dancing. They believed it would eventually work, but it just needed a little more time. The music continued, and with it the dancing, and victims were falling every day. One of the merchants who worked in the area wrote in his notes that around 15 people were dying daily from the dancing. By now, about a month had passed since the beginning of the dancing fever, and it was clear that encouraging the dancing hadn't worked. Accounts say that the number of dancers approached 400 during that period. The leaders of the city met again and decided they needed to find another solution. This time, the discussion was different. The city leaders said that maybe the cause of this affliction was the moral decline of the people and their distancing from religion. If that was the reason, then people needed to return to their faith and stop anything that contributed to moral decay. They decided to ban gambling houses and brothels, and they expelled anyone with a bad reputation from the city, to the point that they even expelled any monk who was exploiting religion for personal gain. But despite all these decisions, the dancing continued and nothing changed. The city council decided to try something else. If the dancers weren't going to stop on their own, then the solution was to force them to stop. They issued a decree banning dancing and music and forced everyone to return to their homes. But it was clear that the dancers didn't care about the city's laws. They continued dancing even inside their homes. It seemed that the decision to dance was never in their control to begin with. The city leaders decided they had to try one last thing. If you remember Frau Troffea, the first person affected by the dancing plague, she didn't play a major role in the events that happened in the city after the illness started with her. But accounts say that her family took her out of the city on the 6th day to look for a solution to her condition. It is said that Troffea's family placed her in a wagon and sent her on a journey about 50 kilometers northwest of the city of Strasbourg. Troffea kept dancing inside the wagon throughout the days of the journey, until she finally arrived at a small church that had a shrine dedicated to a saint named Saint Vitus. Troffea's story ends here and is not documented beyond this point. But since the story ends here, historians believe that Troffea stopped dancing when she reached the church of Saint Vitus, because if the story had continued in any other way, it would most likely have been documented and wouldn't have ended here. The leaders of Strasbourg decided to do the same thing for the 400 dancers. They would load them all into wagons and send them on a journey to the church of Saint Vitus. The city leaders prepared a wax statue in the likeness of Saint Vitus to offer as a gift to the church, and they prepared red shoes which they made all the dancers wear before putting them into the wagons. It seems that wearing red shoes was considered a form of offering to Saint Vitus. The dancers got into the wagons and danced inside them throughout the days of the journey until they finally reached the church of Saint Vitus. After they arrived, the dancers got out of their wagons and entered the church. Inside, The monks had them hold hands and dance in a circle, and they read to them from sacred texts. And after they finished, they let everyone who was able to donate a small amount of money, and then they let them leave the church. It seemed like it worked. The number of affected people stopped dancing when they left the church, and they were finally able to control their bodies. Some of them gradually slowed their dancing until it stopped. After a short time, the dancing fever finally ended after 2 months of suffering, as if the blessings of Saint Vitus had saved the city from this affliction. What exactly happened? Why did the dancing fever start, and why did it end? Was it really a curse caused by moral decline that was resolved through a miracle from a religious figure? Or is there another explanation? One of the scholars who studied the dancing fever phenomenon was Paracelsus. He visited the city of Strasbourg to study the phenomenon in 1526, about 8 years after the events. Paracelsus said that the cause of the dancing plague was women. He claimed that this dancing was like a feminist movement that led women to leave their household duties and go out dancing in the streets as a form of protest. It seems that this theory focuses on the beginning of the dancing fever with Frau Troffea, but it ignores everything that happened after the beginning, including the spread of the outbreak and how it ended. In general, there is no documentation stating that only women participated in the dancing, which would have been an important detail that should have been recorded if it were true. There is another theory that says the dancing fever was caused by food poisoning that affected a large number of the city's residents. This theory suggests that agricultural crops were infected with a type of fungus that had sedative and hallucinogenic properties. As a result, anyone who ate the contaminated crops began hallucinating and dancing unconsciously. The flaw in this theory is that the effects of hallucinogens usually do not last for long periods and do not affect everyone in the same way. The dancing fever lasted for more than a month, and everyone who was affected entered the same state of dancing, which is not typical for hallucinogens. The most likely and widely accepted theory is that the dancing fever was the result of mass hysteria. To understand what exactly happened, we need to know what life was like in the city of Strasbourg at that time. People were living under pressure and difficult conditions. There was a clear class divide in the city. Prices were high, taxes were heavy, and the government had laws and practices that made life harder for residents. Citizens were not allowed to graze their livestock in public pastures, and they were not allowed to fish, gather firewood, or even collect fruits from the forests and fields around the city. In addition to the pressures created by the government, the city went through difficult years due to natural factors. Many diseases and epidemics passed through the city, along with extreme weather fluctuations, from drought in the summer to snow in the winter, which led to the death of agricultural crops. The result was increased poverty and hunger in the city. The year 1517, which came right before the year of the dancing plague, was especially bad. It was literally called the bad year because it brought together all kinds of disasters, from diseases to harsh weather to crop failure. These conditions were suitable for the emergence of mass hysteria. We can imagine how the continuous chain of hardships affecting the city's residents could lead people to believe that they were under a curse, magic, punishment, or something similar. If the mind is convinced of something like that, then a reaction like dancing because of this curse, and continuing it until something opposite happens, like visiting a religious figure, does not seem unrealistic.